have a special guest with us today. I had a gentleman that I had originally hoped to join to Japan a couple of years ago, and unfortunately, due to COVID, that trip was canceled. And I want to say that Ken refunded everybody's money and then moved to Canada. And I want to welcome to the podcast Ken Kaminesky. Ken, thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking time to talk to us.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
And are you in Canada right now?
Yeah, I'm in Montreal.
Montreal, okay. So again, you ran workshops with a great deal of integrity. I've got to tell that to everybody. And unfortunately, it appears that you may not be running workshops in the future.
Yeah, it's all under advisement right now. I've taken a long step back and looked into the possibility of doing it again. COVID was a wake-up call for most people who worked in the travel industry, and that was really the thing that was sustaining me. It was running these photography tours and all these wonderful places around the world. But it was also something that was consuming me as a human being, and working 80 hours a week and really finding no work-life balance. And so taking a look at what COVID did in the negative is one thing, but sometimes you have to count your blessings, where something of that nature can also, in my case, make me take a strong, hard look at what I was doing. Understand that there's more important things in life than just making money. Success is how you define it. I love the tours that I was doing. I was very fortunate to have, amazing guests that were, passionate travelers and photographers who really, tuned into the vibe that I set on these tours. And the tours were not really workshops; they were more tours. So it was really a mix of enjoying the culture, the food, the history, everything else apart from the photography, but surrounding it with really great photo opportunities, at the right times of day, at the right times of year, and making sure that people had a nice balance of all of what travel gets to offer you, and then come back with amazing pictures that become wonderful memories. But now, after COVID, prices, from my operators around the world have gone up substantially. I redid the website over the course of November, December of last year, and after doing that, almost had a bit of an epiphany where, I saw that, my God, these prices are going to be much higher than they were in the past, and I just don't know if I feel even comfortable offering those prices to clients. And even if I was comfortable doing it, I don't know if, the client base that I had was going to be willing to pay those higher prices. And so now I'm taking a very strong, hard look at all of this and wondering if it's worth my effort to even put in all that time, effort, money, energy into this again, and make it an offering that becomes something worthwhile, both for me and for the guests. So right now, everything's on pause, on hold. And I'm not exactly sure if I'm going to be running things again in the future, but if I do, I want to do it at the same high level that I was before. And we'll see. Time will tell.
Yep. And I think a lot of people did a lot of introspection due to COVID and the shutdowns. And I want to say, my big regret is I did not get to join you, because the trips that you described are exactly what we look forward to doing. In fact, your trip that you had planned for 2024 covered everything that we wanted to do, and I haven't been able to find anything that even came close to that. It seems like most people just do Tuscany or the Dolomites or just a particular area. So if you ever do that trip again, I want to be one of the first ones that you contact.
Thank you. I appreciate the kind words. Mm-hmm. I was really lucky in all these places, but in particular Italy, where I worked with such a great group of people who ran a company called Walks of Italy, who were my operators in Italy. And I just loved their passion for Italy. And what they did was never anything really surrounding photography, but they were able to work with me on these itineraries that really celebrated everything that was special about Tuscany, Rome, Cinque Terre, all these areas that had so much amazing food, wine, culture, and everything else that made and makes Italy special, and also special access to places like the Colosseum, the Vatican, the Duomo in Florence, all of these things where we'd be able to have either these places to ourselves or to have special access before hours, or just amazing guides who literally would have PhDs in like art history or archaeology, and would be able to tell the most amazing stories about everything that had to do with Italy. And then we'd have exceptional restaurants that were vetted by their team, and even got a chance to sit down with the chefs. And we would literally start our Italy tour in Rome, sitting on top of this beautiful building, getting a cooking lesson from two chefs who would, and they helped us make our own pasta and sauce while we're watching the sunset over the ancient city. And that was like our welcome dinner to be able to start this whole process. So to me, again, that really celebrates everything that's special about Italy to me, and getting that kind of a thing is not what you're going to get on a typical workshop. Mm-hmm. And I love people who offer these workshops who are really, passionate about pure photography. Mm. But in my estimation, there's more to life than just that one thing. And when we can put a blend of it together, it really helps you come back with a special experience.
Yeah, I totally agree. In fact, the workshops or tours that I like the best are exactly what you described, where you get to work with locals, even spending time with local families, local people, and learning more about their culture, the local foods, and just kind of fitting in, temporarily becoming a local.
Yeah, everyone from even like our drivers to, the local guides that we would have would, add a certain flair and panache to everything, and would make, each moment special in its own way. And that could be anywhere from Japan to Myanmar to Jordan, where everything is just so completely different. But I always want to work with locals who can really impart a sense of their pride in where they come from and help us celebrate it.
Sounds good. Yep. And again, I regret that I never got the chance to join you, but maybe.
Look, there's no, you never say never. And at the same time, there's always going to be opportunities to do this, whether it's with me or with somebody else. There's going to be someone that picks up the gauntlet and keeps going. We live in such a wonderful age of technology and innovation and evolution, whether it's, in photography, computers, but even in travel. I'm seeing, like, since I started traveling for work, how quickly this has evolved to where so many more people have access to travel. Mm-hmm. And, the best time to travel is always now. So never wait. Always look for what you can do now, because you don't know what tomorrow can bring.
Absolutely. And I didn't mention in the beginning, but I put down the Discovery Photo Tours was the name of your company.
Yeah. Site is still up, and
yep.
I'm not necessarily taking orders or anything right now, but it'll stay up for as long as I have the possibility of running things in the future. And I'm still talking to some of the
Fingers
people
crossed.
that I've run my tours with. Last week or the week before last, I spoke with my operator from Myanmar, who of course right now is not running anything in Myanmar due to the political upheaval.
No, it's understandable.
And that's a tragedy right there. But he also he's originally from Finland, and he's made changes in terms of what he does. He's now living in Bangkok and waiting for time to go back. And he said he's actually starting to run some things in Myanmar again on a small level. So there's always hope. Yep. You can never think that just because of the news that we get about something, news is a funny thing, right? And especially when it comes from a country where we get very, very little news, like Myanmar. Take things with a grain of salt. And I'm not saying that the coup was bad. It's obviously horrible, and I hope that changes sooner rather than later. But if there ever is an opportunity to go somewhere and you can go and support local people and have a chance to spend your money there where it's going to benefit them, never think that you're supporting the government that you may or may not agree with. Go think that you're literally supporting those people in these areas that really need the help, especially during trying times.
Well, it's like maybe a year and a half ago, Fred and I did a photo walk for the people from Skylum. And I got to talking with them, and didn't realize at the time that they're from
Ukrainian.
Yeah. And
yeah, that's my heritage as well.
Oh, are you from you? Well, they were talking about how beautiful Kiev was in the Ukraine, and so we would love to go. And of course, it was like a week later that the Russians invaded. So yeah, you just never know. Yeah. I want to ask, did you sell stock photography at all?
Oh God, that was my main source of income for about 10 years. So yeah, I originally started with a little company called Sharpshooters out of Florida, of all places. Oh. And then they got bought up just like everybody else did. So they got bought up by Corbis. Mm-hmm. And the wonderful woman who was the president of Sharpshooters ended up becoming the VP of Corbis, and brought me over to Corbis. And then she moved on to Jupiter Images, which then really became what sustained me. And I was making a really nice living doing stock photography for them for many years. And then Getty bought them, and Getty, I don't know if this is going to get me in legal trouble, but they're the devil. They're just the worst company I've ever had to deal with in my life. They lost all my images for over a year.
Oh, gee.
After the transition, I could not get in touch with anybody. No one answered emails. So not only did they cancel the contracts so I had a contract where with Jupiter Images, I was doing half of my work was, keeping my copyright and just selling regular stock images, rights managed. And the rest of it was I would sell outright to Jupiter Images. And, this was lifestyle images. It wasn't things that couldn't be recreated by just about anybody else. It was, stuff that you'd end up seeing in insurance advertisements and bank ads and things like that. A lot of people stuff, happy people, families, and it was a great way to make a living as a photographer for many years. But Getty just destroyed all of that, and it's unfortunate. But again, it's an evolution, and it wouldn't have had the chance to travel the world if Getty had not come in and pulled the rug from under my feet to have to make that decision of what am I going to do now. And what I was going to do now was reinvent myself again. So
the reason I asked is I made a pretty good money in stock photography until the proliferation of iPhones and the small point-and-shoot cameras. But now, with AI, you were talking about technology earlier, I haven't had a sale in 3 or 4 months. I'm currently with Alamy, which is, I think, based out of London. And I know there was a big firm in Germany just recently went out of business. I saw an ad recently on Google that came through and had the Paris, the Eiffel Tower, photo generated by AI. So
honestly, it's another evolution, right? And I can understand where people who have made a living doing this or made side hustle money doing this, that it's upsetting, but you can't fight the wind.
Oh no, it's here to stay. It's unfortunate, but that's the way.
When digital came in, right? I remember this was something where, when I was younger and I was assisting other photographers, I saw a lot of those guys who were older at the time when digital came in, and they were like, nah, this is never going to take. You can never replace film. Film is so much better. And it's like, okay, we'll see. And to me, digital changed my life to the point where I could make a really good living at photography, never worrying about having to go click, click, click. Whereas each time I'd click with film, it would be more development charges, more film charges. And, so
36 pictures and change the roller or use another body.
Yeah. So it's, one man's poison is another man's pleasure. And you just got to take what you can, and you got to evolve with the times. Darwin said it's not the strongest of the species that survives, it's the one that's the most adaptable to change.
Yep. Well, Fred and I have been doing this podcast for over 12 years now, and we predicted it would be at least 10 years before digital took over, and boy, were we wrong. But we're willing to admit it.
And it's happening now with AI. Like, just look at ChatGPT in terms of its evolution. When did it come out? Like October last year?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And already it's in its fourth incarnation.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. So either you can join in and try and take advantage of it. And that's the new paradigm of how things are going to be in photography and art in general. Or you can get left behind. Mm-hmm. And that's just the reality of things. Nature is not kind. Neither is evolution.
That's true.
And it's not necessarily supposed to be. You leave behind, what's old, and you can look back on it with nostalgia, but never look back on things and have a sense of anger in your heart about what's now and new, because what can and is a little bit harmful, let's say, to some people, is also going to be what's going to open up the doors for countless people, now and moving forward. And it's always the next generation who's coming behind us that is going to set what it's going to be in the future. Mm-hmm. And I'm embracing AI, and I'm not really doing much photography at all these days. Mm-hmm. Part of it is because I've changed, a little bit of what I'm doing with work. Others, what I'm seeing with AI, and I'm going, okay, do I really want to get involved with that? And maybe not. But it doesn't mean I'm upset that AI is here and doing things that are taking jobs away. It's changing who has new kinds of jobs. Mm-hmm. And I think it's an exciting time. And I'm looking on the sidelines at this going, okay, maybe I'll jump in. And if I don't, I'm still on the sidelines cheering on whoever is going to be exceptional at utilizing this to their base capabilities.
Yes, I too. I see a lot of benefits to AI, but I also see some downsides, and hopefully that we embrace the good and suppress the negative aspects of it.
Fingers crossed. I mean, that's all we can do is you just, you do your best with what you have and hope that whoever is utilizing whatever is new is going to have a sense of, decency, morality, and whatnot. And that's not necessarily AI in photography, but AI in general. There's obviously a lot of concerns about what's coming up. I'm looking at companies to invest in AI, and I think this is the right time to be looking at doing stuff like that and supporting those companies. Yes. It's the next big thing.
Yeah.
Where internet was the early 2000s. AI is right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I even think that there's going to be, as you say, an evolution within that. These companies that are starting up, sometimes, and Jim and I were talking about this, how some of the coders, the programmers, may find themselves not doing as much as they were originally, because when AI matures, it may say, I can do this, you don't need to do it. Yep. And so they're going to have to evolve. Program
themselves out of business, maybe.
And I'm not saying that this is good or bad. I'm just saying this is what you have to think about.
Different.
It's going to be social
Be prepared.
A quantum shift.
Well, let's jump into another area that's kind of related with social media influencers. What do you think their effect is going to be on the photography business?
I think this is, honestly, myself and some of my colleagues that were working on, social media when it first started were some of the first, and we weren't called influencers at the time. And that's honestly how I made so many inroads in terms of blogging, Facebook, Twitter. Google Plus was really good for photographers in the day.
Right.
Instagram, obviously, when it came out, and still to today. All of those things have been extremely good tools for me. When I was writing my blog, it was doing extremely well for me as well. It opened up doors to getting tourism boards and travel companies involved in hiring me to go and do shoots or stories for them, and that hasn't changed. In fact, it's evolving to the point now where the pathetic amount of social media following that I have today, which I'd really left behind for the last 5 years or so, has been followed by a generation of people who are so adept at being in front of the camera on YouTube, especially, let's say, to do the video stuff, which is really the next wave, I find. They're so damn good at this, and they're interesting, and it's fun to watch people with passion sharing their knowledge about, places, photography, techniques, Photoshop, all of that stuff. And again, I applaud all of these people who are utilizing this well. One of the highest sought after jobs in the United States for the young generation now is being a social media influencer, more than, being a doctor, fireman, whatever. It's like social media influencer. But I think a lot of people don't understand that you have to become, amazing at what you do, and a good teacher, and comfortable marketing yourself. And that takes a lot of talent. So good for all those people who are doing it effectively, well, and helping share their knowledge about things that they do and places that they go. My hat's off to anyone who does it at a high level.
Yep, you're absolutely correct. Well, do you have any words of wisdom you want to leave us with this morning? And again, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I think, again, we're talking a lot about evolution and new technologies and things like that are in our midst, and we're at this nexus point where it's fascinating to see the evolution happening right in front of our eyes. Not advice, but maybe not even words of wisdom, but suggestion is embrace it and find a way to utilize this to your best abilities. Never consider yourself too good to learn something new. We're human beings. We're eternally curious about everything, and if we're not, we should be, because that's part of the reason that we're here on this planet, is to learn things and find out how things work. And and as artists and photographers, we're lucky to be able to utilize that in terms of being creative and inspiring other people to also be creative and curious. So be eternally creative, be eternally curious, I guess, if you want words of wisdom.
Can I sum it and say that the world and people are always evolving, so don't fight it. Let's go along with it.
Absolutely.
Well, Ken, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you guys for taking the time. It's nice to be able to do this. It's good to talk travel, photography, and technology with you guys.
And hopefully one of these days we'll get to meet face to face.
That would be really nice.